Chapter 23. Monday, 31st of October 2016. Riverport, Massachusetts. 21 days after the Riverport disaster. It says something about the spirit of a town that even after disaster and calamity, people take time to celebrate traditions. Though porches and stoops were shattered, lawns piled with gathered rubble and wreckage, jack-o'-lanterns sat on rails and steps, and cardboard witches dangled and turned from eaves. Halloween was a lot more homemade this year, but it felt good. A lot of people had left Riverport after the disaster, or were selling up. But those who remained were coming together as a community in ways that Amy had only ever heard Dad talk about in stories from when he was a kid. Riverport? Oh, Riverport, such a pretty little town. Amy looked at a guy sitting on the beach to her left, next to her homemade stand. You went to Riverport High? The man shook his head. Nah, I'm from Jersey, just visiting. Shaved head, glasses, beard, layered against the autumn chill in a two-piece suit and wool overcoat. Just watching the river. O'Sullivan Park had a good view of the river, and at this time of day it looked like molten silver. From there you can watch crews rebuilding the bridge. Spectator, huh? She said. Come to see if there's money in reconstruction? The visitor glanced at her. I ain't a speculator, sweets. Like I said, just visiting. You believe that stuff you're handing out? Her card table was stacked with flyers. Post-disasters, they'd been a nightmare to get printed, and nobody was taking them. The sign she taped to the front of the table read, I was there. Monarch is lying. Read the truth. The flyers featured the high school photograph of Jack Joyce. Frame was stamped over his face in provocative rubber stamp font. Amy saw the paper folded in his lap, the one with the same front page as every other paper and website for the last few days. Martin Hatch's face, speculation about October 10th, and the news that universities, labs, and agencies the world over were either losing or outsourcing key personnel to Monarch's new project. The project that was going to save the world. You really believe that stuff you're reading? She threw his question back at him. He glanced at the paper. This time last month I'd have thought demise Joyce Field was where Riverport Little Leagues met on the weekends. Then it's brownouts and blackouts all over and there's all that stuff on the internet. Real smart people saying it happened and real dumb politicians saying they need more evidence, so... The peace movement, man. 4 incidents, all those witnesses, all that footage. You don't fake that. Amy handed him a flyer. Read it or don't, your call. She started gathering the stacks, putting them into her backpack. Respect existence or expect resistance. Nice. It's yours. Give it up? I gotta take my neighbor's kid trick-or-treating. Weird place to be celebrating the night and veil between the worlds is thinnest. Who the hell wants ghosts at a time like this? He stood up. Nice to meet you. Amy kept shoveling pamphlets into her pack. Sure thing. The man turned, crumpled what was in his hand and tossed it into the trash. Amy's last year in metaphor, right there. She zipped the bag, folded the table and headed home. Passing the bench, she glanced in the trash, the bright red of the crumpled paper snagging her curiosity. What he had thrown wasn't her flyer. It was something else. Fishing it out and unfolding it, she found herself holding a balled-up return ticket to Thailand, meeting up to someone she knew. Main Street and surrounds like Kabul with Starbucks. Gas mains, power lines, infrastructure, cars, and trucks. They'd all been fucked up beyond belief. To hear Sophia Amaral explain it, it was areas with densest populations that got it the worst. Something about the web of cause and effect being far thicker and far more varied in any location with a lot of people. Those last few stutters had played hell there. The last one especially had gone beyond messing with things and really got to the people. The final hour of the disaster had been a spawning ground for heartbreak and horror stories. Unexpectedly, sadly, beautifully, that was probably a big part of what was bonding people after the madness. A desire to make amends. Civilized people had lived the alternative, and the value of what they had become crystal clear. The people of Riverport had a cause now, and that cause was, for the time being at least, looking out for each other. Hazard tape, construction signs, and warnings were taped or lashed across the frontages of more buildings than not. Street corners were piled with brick. Trucks worked 24/7 clearing the ruin. Signs were pasted on each block offering rewards for information. Each of those signs displayed 2 faces, Paul Serene's and his own. Jack adjusted his glasses and kept walking. He walked differently now, purposefully, and when he spoke, he angled his jaw forwardly, just slightly. This changed his silhouette. It changed his face. It changed how he formed words. Sometimes that was all it took. He'd learned a lot from Beth. The Jersey accent was all her. The shaved head, glasses, and beard were insurance. Jack Joyce walked toward Beth's old house. The neighborhood hadn't been hit as badly as other places, mainly because it was low density. He stopped on the lawn and picked up the for sale sign, then unlocked the door. His phone vibrated again. He checked it. Another message from Will. The 12th. Same as all the others. Jack, don't. We need to talk about this. He pocketed the phone, opened the door, and went inside. From across the street, peering down the gap between two houses, Amy watched him pocket the phone, open the door, and go inside, locking the door behind himself. The house was empty, devoid of life or furniture. The basement was another story. In the hours after the disaster, Jack had taken advantage of the confusion. This is how the basement of that suburban house came to be equipped with a small amount of bleeding-edge chronon-related technology. Just enough to create a small, but very specific effect. Sophia Amaral didn't look up as he came down the steps. Are you always going to be this relaxed about timetables? Jack took off his hat, hooked it on the banister. It got sunny. Nick was leaning against the wall, seated in a folding chair. She's been fretting. Gave me the 3rd degree because it took 20 minutes too long to get Dad back home. He loves watching those Monarch crews build that bridge. Half the space was bracketed off by the placement of 4 pylons, field generators. Sophia turned in her seat, facing Jack, all business. Working with Paul, we conducted such interactions under much more contained conditions. You're certain the subject is reliable? Yeah. Jack took off his coat, laid it across the back of the folding chair. He touched the bullet around his neck, out of habit. I am. Did you take a reading on the MJ field? I have. And? Where once we had 2 days to live, we now have 5 years. The field had not been repaired, but integrity has been restored and the rate of degradation slowed. Paul was right then. The end of time hits in 5 years. We were both correct. Your actions simply bought us more time. Let me point out yet again that this only further proves that the past events cannot be changed. But you're helping me do this anyway, right? If past events are immutable, which they are, the only thing that could be lost in the undertakings is your life. Also, she admitted, I would like very much to see him again, even in his current state. So, this is it. Nick sat forward. I get to see this thing? Pisser. Jack stood before the squared-off space. Okay, do it. Sophia dialed the output of the chronon batteries, popped the idiot shield from the activation switch, and then flipped it. The space within the pylons hummed, inverted, then popped. Distortion waves pulsed off. The squared-off space held a neatly contained stutter. Jack waited. Come on, he muttered. You're 4-dimensional. You know you're supposed to be here. Then just like that, a 6-foot fractal humanoid inhabited the space. Fuck me! Nick! Sophia snapped. Sorry. The shifter remained still, surveying Jack, outline flickering only slightly. Then it raised its shining palm. Jack did the same. It was good to see him. Hey, Paul, he said. You ready to do the impossible? One night in the recent past. Will took his brother by the arm. You have to let her go. We have a universe to consider. The dead, the living, and the yet to be born. Jack nodded. Couldn't open his mouth to say a single word. He just leaned into Beth and held her as best as he could, just for a moment. He whispered something he wished she could hear, but knew she never would. He whispered, I'll come back for you. Hey folks, it's Bangarang Eliko here. Just wanted to do this little afterword to... 2024 was kind of a big year for Remedy games, aside from last year coming out with Alan Wake 2. But this year we saw some DLC that had a lot of crossovers that had echoes to Quantum Break in the Remedyverse. It kind of sucks that Microsoft still holds the rights to Quantum Break and doesn't let Remedy do anything with it. And the fact that this doesn't have an audiobook of its own, that at least that I can find, I wanted to pay homage to some of my favorite characters. It might not be everybody's favorite in the Remedyverse, but to me it meant a lot. It's one of my favorite stories, and I wanted to share that with everybody. I had a lot of fun recording this, and it really kind of upped my game to see what I can do with the software and what I can do audio-wise to narrate a story. And I want to thank everybody who's been following me and listening along with my attempts to do voices and add sound effects to these things, and yeah. So yeah, if Sam Lake or anybody who's a Remedy fan is listening out there, this is for you guys. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't really care a lot about the Remedyverse, because they created something that was really special. Man, I just want it to be out there and more people to enjoy it as much as I do. Alright. To the end of 2024, have a happy new year, and I'll see you in the next book that I record.